Thank you very much. I think it's the toughest time. You all got your badges. We got just in half of an hour, but no worries, we will do this very quick. It will be just a short overview. I think deep dive will be maybe somewhere further. We will see. Okay. This is my, meanwhile, good friend, Julian. He's working for ENW. We did this presentation together, quite fast and quick and dirty. And yeah, we are very happy to speak to you about a very important topic.
And yeah, today I've also got Peter. He was the head of the Cyber Defense Center at Helios Kliniken GmbH, living in Berlin. He's podcaster and long-standing member of the Chaos Computer Club. So yeah, I'm proud to be able to give a talk together with him because he's the one with the problems.
Speaking of problems, what is just quick numbers, maybe from one or the other. Doesn't know Helios, it's the European largest healthcare provider. So we got round about 89 clinics, 230 roundabout medical care centers. So 5.5 million people treated a year. And yeah, quite huge environment and quite huge business. So maybe the most important numbers are we having about 62,000 clients out there with around 10,000 servers. And then coming to the ID environment, maybe someone have been in the ID track already, so you can imagine that Active Directory of around about 140,000 users with 130,000 groups, and around about 140,000 users to manage, it's quite hard. So we got around about 150 DC servers out there, and running just, yeah, roughly 35,000 IoMT devices. Most of them are network connected. Not all of them, but most of them. And in this whole environment, we got a SOC, which has basically two teams, which is around about 18 members, and we handle around about 40 incidents a day. Yeah, some of them know that Germany is highly regulated. Just a few regulation, what we have to do as a healthcare provider. So I can read you now all out the German stuff there, but I think the most of them you can read by yourself. If you're not a native speaker, it will matter to you anyway, so I will just go very quickly about it. Maybe one thing is, there was a state-sponsored fund a couple of years ago established, which called KHZG, this is the last one, and this one sees as well to invest a minimum of 15% of the money into IT security or infosec security. So I think it's quite important that there are as well some state-sponsored things going on to help in this very difficult environment. But there are many, many more. So we try to fit all our regulatories on one slide. It's quite a big one. I think one or the other maybe, which are coming as well from big businesses, know one of these regulatories, but these are basically the ones what we have to follow.
So, and that's the part where we start talking about the challenges or problems that Peter actually has. And the first challenge that may not be that obvious is that they have like all publicly available buildings. Those buildings are operated like 24/7. They have no closing times. It's really hard to actually lock doors because there are many people of different skill sets and roles that need to access those rooms and actually to care about their patients. And even the patients are not like glued to their patient room. They are like flexible and mobile in the hospital rooms. So there are many areas where they actually could go and could access like network ports or medical devices, OT, that's required in those areas of the hospitals and care providers. And of course, you're not really like managing to get a point on controlling such infrastructure because you need the flexibility to access those rooms and to have those devices, to have those dedicated networks, but accessible on thousands of network ports. So it's kind of a challenge that's hardly to tackle actually because you could implement like network security or port security on those like access ports, but there will be devices that simply cannot cope with that. So how to actually tackle those cases? So there will be a port that's accessible. A short story maybe about
these devices are, what we're having in our environment, is roughly a big hospital of ours has around about 100 beds. That's how we counting a big hospital. And we got around 400 electronic doors. So, and something happened with the software to the electronic door, so they lost all the programmation of that. So we have to reinstall back the programmer, which are wireless connected to the doors, but because the key was lost, so personnel has to go to every door and reprogram the door and pair it again with the programmer. So this takes roughly 5 people 1 week just to handle 400 doors. So that's a quite harsh environment.
Yeah, and that's only the physical layer.
Yes.
So the first layer with the doors. Yeah, so also you of course have like medical device systems that not only consist of the medical device itself, but also of course of like server systems, communication systems, of connecting those infrastructures. You have many infrastructures of different manufacturers that are talking to each other in some kind. You have like sync systems where not really the patients have access to. You have devices that are like point of care devices that are used by patients to, for example, measure glucose levels or stuff. So you're really interconnecting various kinds of systems and infrastructures together that need to be kind of compatible to each other. So to increase security by having a new standard is hard because every device needs to be able to talk that standard. So it's really hard to actually update that. And most of those central systems are usually requiring some kind of authentication or authorization mechanism. So usually you have to integrate that into your AD. And that will like cause for a system that's used in 89 clinics of different roles and wards for like having 2,000 or 4,000 different AD roles only for that one system that you're using. And then you will have like 80 different more. So yeah, that's a variety of different problems that you will have as an operator by simply using systems in your large environments in the end that seem to be like controllable, but in the end you have at least to also manage those and to monitor those and to manage all the different permissions and onboardings and different stuff. So there's many people required to actually do that. And also, you want to have those integrated into your backup processes. So it's really interesting to see how you could integrate various different processes with different management and update processes, like remote management solutions for manufacturers that can directly access those systems. Sometimes you're only like providing the operating system and the manufacturer is installing his software stack on his own and managing that on his own. So you're buying the service except the operating system. Sometimes you have to do that on your own too. So yeah, there's no real standard in how to proceed with that. And basically every hospital has the problem of integrating those systems into their processes in the end too, and especially in the backup process, because operations is key. If you're not able to use that system anymore, you're like, basically closing the functionality of delivering that kind of care in the end. So that's not feasible in the end. So actually the operator is not really in the position of like controlling those processes in the end. So that needs to be performed with the manufacturer together as a joint effort. And I think the roadmap in that was getting better in the last few years, like in the last decade. But there's still different kinds and of ways to go for like the full integration of those systems into the hospital systems, because in the end you will have like 650 hospitals in Germany, and everyone has to solve this problem for his own, basically, because they are not like standardized processes for that. So we want not only to like show you slides with much text, but also like to have a little bit of visualization for the problem. So we designed a kind of hospital which is really schematic. So we have like a hospital network, we have like patients, we have different medical devices, but we also have like backup systems or third-party systems and manufacturers managing the systems. We have back-end systems which are only used for administrative purposes, like the infrastructure you don't see usually, potentially. But that's not all, of course, because you have support processes that are not used and obviously used in the hospital, but you require those processes in order to deliver care in the end. So like in-house logistics, like bringing staff required to deliver care to the patient, or bringing the patient to the person or device delivering like therapy or diagnostics and stuff. You have like the medical communication server that needs to translate different aspects of the same protocol for the different devices or systems you're using. So yeah, there's really much to see, which you have really to uncover first to at least tackle those and document those processes and see the technical components of like controlling those in the end. So the hospital will not look like this, but maybe like that with the support processes. So it's getting complex, and you'll like have to cope with that in the end. So yeah, coping with that, giving back to Peter.
Yeah. There are just a few more challenges we have to address as well. Human resources. So, of course, we are a sector which is financially very tight. For example, if you do a standard operation on your knee, you get a certain amount of money. So this is fixed. So for a knee operation, just to give you some figures, is about 3,000 to 5,000 euros. So in this 3,000 to 5,000 euros cost of operation, of the real operation of your knee, you have to include all the operation and all the things around the hospital as well. So there goes your IT budget, your management budget, your risk budget, your things you use during the operation, like all the tools, the doctors, the nurses, and all the other stuff. So this is a quite tight financial scope what you have to be in. So that's the reason why it's as well very hard to get in this hard and very wide sector as well as some personnel, because out there are much more easier ways to work for a company which is not that complex and not that huge. As well, the problem is as well in most of the hospitals is a historical subordinary of the IT department, so it's always somewhere down there, because it's not the primary value what we are delivering to our patients out there. So it's quite hard to couple with these issues as well. And of course, the pandemic increased all of that. So that's still a huge problem. Yeah, approaches. What we can do? Good question. So one approach is to do, of course, ITSM. So I think it's one of the keys. And centralize a lot of things. So like the SOC, centralize your core infrastructure. So because if you have a lot of clinics like we do, from smaller ones to bigger ones, if you have one standard, you can easily roll it out. It's more manageable for us. And as well, get all the things which can, cause problems somehow organized, like the hosting or the remote sessions, because the one vendor wants to have a team session to do remote sessions, the other one wants to have a permanent VPN tunnel to your environment, and then if you ask 5 other vendors, they will come up with their own ideas and standards and processes what they want to establish to get remote connections and support services within your clinic. As well, because it's 24/7 operation, backup is the key. So to be able to recover quite hard after an incident, it could be failure of a hard drive or ransomware attack or whatever. I think backup and processes are very, very helpful. It's one of the keys. So the whole topic of BCM, it's quite important in this environment. And of course, share resources between different locations. Of course, it makes totally sense to use that in a huge environment. And of course, make your security monitoring and support processes kind of standardized, that the same applies to a smaller clinic like to a huge clinic. So the key for us is as well service orientation, standardization, and harmonization. This is one of the things what we are saying out loud to the whole community in the clinic world, because this is the only thing how you can, address these issues. Yeah, sounds quite good, but it's always a problem. Like I mentioned, resources, it's always a big, big problem in this field. Then, of course, you have to change your infrastructure during 24/7. So it's quite hard to, change the software for for a medical device which is a patient on and say, okay, we have now to do Windows updates, or we have to upgrade from a Windows XP machine to something newer. So it's quite hard. So yeah, you have to figure out ways to do that within the 24/7 operation. Of course, some of the devices are redundant so that you can use someone else and exchange them, but not all of them. So if you have, for example, a big X-ray machine, you cannot just, buy another one and put it next to it and then do X-raying, because they are so huge, expensive, and hard to operate. That's quite not possible. Yeah, as well, if you have the chance to start with a clean environment, that's, I think, the only thing what you can do. But with a clean environment comes as well some challenges. So, of course, you can establish your core infrastructure, like servers, switches, all the new stuff in, so with the newest operating systems, the new network infrastructure, all the fancy stuff, but you're still dealing with the same old IoT or IOMT devices. So even there, you have the problems that you even have a clean environment, everything is set up completely new, the newest versions, newest patches, new operating systems, and then comes the vendor with his machine, which says, okay, sorry, Windows 11? No, it's not fitting for Windows 11. We have to use Windows 7 for that. Sorry, you can. You can't not downgrade your ID schema anymore. Oh, that's bad, because we need some of them to run our X-ray machines or whatever. So that's quite harsh with clean environments, because if you ask someone if you have all the problems and you can start from scratch, that's always a good thing. But in the medical sector, it's quite hard. So it's a tough cookie. And how you deal with that? Of course, what you have to do, you have very closely monitor your systems. You have to know your weak spots. Of course, you have to do step-by-step replacing devices. There, of course, are some maintenance windows for certain medical devices. There have to be as well. So you can use, these windows where the devices are getting serviced to do certain upgrades and stuff like that. Of course, if you have newly systems introduced to your network, scan them, analyze them. So I think that's the reason why we have to do or work with external vendors as well to do this security test, because you are not an expert on every IoT or IOMT to scan and perform analysis of these devices. And then you have, of course, develop your own concepts to run these machines in your environment, because you know your environment the best. And then as well work together with the vendors and manufacturer to develop ideas or concepts to integrate them in a safer way. Because we don't want to, work against each other. It's a way to how to, get the vendor or the manufacturer on the hand and, talk to him and show how you can, best safely implement this kind of device or service or system in your critical infrastructure. Yeah, I think one thing what you have to do and keep in mind as well in this hospital environment, you have to create your own standards. Because if you listen to all the vendors and all the suppliers out there, they will come with 25 different standards. And you cannot fit all of them in your huge environment. You saw how many facilities we operate with, how many AD users. If every vendor comes with their own idea, you can't manage that. So you have to do this in a way that you can manage it, and this is the best way to do it, is to give them your standards to the vendors. So, and of course be hard of them, because we know the big brands are coming up there and say, no, if we can't put our own AD here, we can't, sell you the product, or we can't run you the product, or we are not able to because of some support reasons or whatever. So maybe you have to get in some hard discussions with them and then find together a way how you can operate such a device in your own network. And define, of course, clinic-wide standards. So the standards for example, security and stuff like that should apply as well from a smaller clinic even to a big clinic. So if you do standards, just be hard on them and push it out to your whole environment. So measure them, of course, rate them, and execute them, because this is the only way how you can handle this.
Yes, you remember our schematic hospital, so I think after that it more looks like this for Peter, or to like increase complexity, it more looks like this. So you have like basically everything you could have at every location, and yeah, you have to solve it somehow. And covered by regulation, it's actually that part. So all the different regulations we saw are like focusing on stuff which is usually functionality, but not really infrastructure. And yeah, it's hard to actually proceed on that. So what's the next steps on that, on how to actually solve something and proceed with securing those infrastructure? Because yeah, you just could not accept something that complex without having a plan and recovering that. So you want to have something to control and monitor, like the ransomware running through one hospital, not spreading to the other 88. So yeah, there needs to be something in the end. And yeah, what's the next steps? So of course, as Peter said, you need an IT and operational strategy. So the goal, of course, is to use the human resources that are available most efficiently. And that's basically by operating the core infrastructure and controlling those processes and yeah, defining those security standards in the end, to have like clear responsibilities on that and to also enforce that in all of those hospitals or medical care providers. And yeah, to perform some regular assessments to see differences to the planned states, and of course, like to see the developments of the plans that were yeah, performed in a strategic manner. And in the end, of course, yeah, the hospitals have to be hard on insisting on their standards and to like force having the medical device infrastructure islands being integrated into their infrastructures following these standards in the end, because otherwise that just doesn't make sense in creating those and doesn't solve any of those problems. So I just want to add something else, because there are standards for medical devices in communicating with each other, but they are usually defining the functional level of those integration, like how to communicate patient admissions between two devices and the central system, or how to communicate like medications. But it's not about like integrating those or like authentication delegation through some central service or similar. So that's a problem that usually comes while actually rolling out the system in the end, and there's no standard for that actually. And yeah, so from our opinion, of course, there needs to be community engagement, because there are many hospitals having the same problems and the same kinds of problems. You have devices and infrastructures that you have to like use for 30 years. So if you decide in using an MRI, you're usually building the building around the MRI and not putting the MRI in the building afterwards. So you have to stick to that product. And yeah, that's why, of course, hospitals also are interested in like improving the situation in the future, because I think like legislation in regards of the devices is increased in the past years. So I think that's a process that's already rolling in the right direction. So we need to tackle the larger problems, which is complexity of integrating those. And yeah, that's only possible, I think, with joint efforts, and then potentially like having the regulators jumping on the right train in the right moment to not impair the movement potentially. But yeah, so I think there is, at least in Germany, the BSI, which already, or the Federal Office for Information Security, which already is doing things. But I think, yeah, there needs to be something from the operators and the field to also like have a look at the challenges and problems that we have talked about in our talk, and to have like solutions that are more standardized and yeah, future-proof for those hospitals. Because Peter mentioned the Krankenhauszukunftsgesetz, KZG. If you're like spending money now on like increasing your IT security, you now want to know how to invest or to finance the processes you're starting. Because when finance is stopping, what are you doing with the processes and the resources you need if you're tight in that at the moment, and you're only able to performing that with those financings? So yeah, that's a huge problem, of course, and I think, yeah, we hope that you enjoyed our talk and, yeah, got awareness for the problems and the problems like Peter has, because I think it's not that large my problem. So I'm sorry for you, but I hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, we're of course available for questions now, because I think we are pretty brilliant in time.
Yes, we do.
Perfect. So yeah, be free to ask some questions.
Thank you.
Hi, great talk. Thanks a lot for that. Like, I wondered whether you guys are getting together on a private industry basis also, because you're one part, right? Your company, but there's others, and if everybody's setting their own standards, you're likely not going to kind of get anywhere. So it probably makes sense to join forces, even if it's not. I think in Sweden or something they have a national health BSI type-ish thing or something, or in Netherlands or somewhere, but if that doesn't exist, maybe you can form your own NGO group of private enterprise and at least kind of, have similar standards, and then it's not, it's not a customization, so you can kind of form like everybody in Germany does it like that. You should adapt to it, dear vendor, because it's important, not just for us. Like, are you looking into that direction?
Yes, so I think community is the key here. So that's why we are holding this talk on the community event. I think putting heads together, develop these kind of standards, like open standards, would fit into small private hospitals to larger, public hospitals. I think we have to get over this barrier of, corporate versus whatever. We have to set, the community standards because we have different needs. The automotive industry, I think, is far, far ahead of this. The healthcare industry, especially in Germany, is way behind. But yeah, good question. I think that's one reason why we're doing this talk, because to get a community and try to push or develop standards and push them out. Okay.
Are there any more questions? All right, that doesn't seem to be the case. Give us a few minutes to hook up the next speaker and join me in giving one last round of applause, or the second.
Okay.